So like many other people, this hyperinflation business is what got me into studying gold and silver and other metals and stuff. And I found that, it didn't take long before I realized that a lot of these things travel together. A lot of these things go down and up at the same time. And, it's really about the value of the dollar, which brings us to the dollar index. So, I don't really like looking at things before 9/11. Things are very different since then. In the late 90s and early 2000s, we were going pretty well. Okay, so when the dollar index was first started, a dollar was a dollar. So I have this 100-point marked off because it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened since January 2003. So after 9/11, we're going down. And by this time, what was in the news? We had the war in Iraq. We started invading them. There was a little scare with North Korea. We created the Department of Homeland Security. But so we're going down. Still going down. Christmas in 2004, we're at like an all-time low. At this point, what was in the news? It was the voter fraud. Bush stole the election, but he still got Person of the Year at the time. We had some human rights violations in Iraq. I believe there's some footage of some American soldiers cutting somebody's head off or something, having fun. So the dollar's going down, going down, going down. A little bit of a little tap over here. So mid-2006, we're at the peak of the housing thing going on. And December 2007, 76. And December 2007, I have this marked off because it's the official start of the Great Recession, which goes on until June 2009. Although some people say it's, we're in a depression right now. This is the real all-time low. Middle of the recession, March 2008, we hit the dollar index all-time low of 70.698. When we started this thing, a dollar was a dollar. And as recently as 5 years, it took 5 years from get to the dollar down to there. But it's not that simple. It's not that simple as saying a dollar is a dollar. And this is definitely not a good measure of inflation or deflation, because this is a relative thing only to the euro, which is also manipulated by its central bankers, and it's a fiat currency created out of thin air and isn't backed by anything except for the promise. And it's also compared to the yen, the pound, the Canadian dollar, the Swedish, and the Swiss. Swedish and the Swiss are cool, but I mean, only like a minor part of that is part of the formula that gives. I mean, basically half of this is like its relationship to the euro, and that's like ridiculous. That's not a good measure of how strong the dollar is. I mean, so anyway, we gotta throw China in there. We gotta throw in Brazil and India. You gotta check out the trade-weighted dollar index, but I doubt that it includes crude oil and gold. But dollar-denominated assets such as gold, euro, silver, crude oil. I mean, since all this stuff, if you're going to be buying it in dollars, this stuff should have an inverse movement with the dollar. So gold should be doing the opposite of this. Crude oil should be doing the opposite of this. And it's suggested to, you should double-check with the dollar index first before making any trade using American dollars. So anyway, back to this Great Recession. Alright. So we got the fall of Lehman Brothers in September 2008. Everybody remembers that. Dollar index was at 78 at the time. You know what we do? We do quantitative easing. That's the new word for printing money. Although we don't really have to print anymore because a lot of it's digital. But we inject a ton of money into the system, and the dollar goes on a rally. You know, things look like it's getting better, and you know, it struggles a little bit, but it's pretty high, and eventually it goes back down. Oh, and by the way, at the end of the recession was over. Cross is 80-ish at that point, and 80 is where we are right now. Today is March 15th, 2012. And 80 is an interesting point. So this quantitative easing starts to, you know, it fails. Dollar goes back down. Reaches a low of 75 November 2009. We hit this 80 point, it goes up again. Now we have a more quantitative easing. And, you know, it still kind of fails for the most part. In a future video, I'm just going to show you this part. I'm going to expand this and go more onto this. I'm going to compare the gold and silver and crude oil prices to this. Because I don't know if the gold and silver and the crude oil will move exactly inverse to this, because this so-called US dollar index is really relative only to these things. You know, I think this is bullshit. So we'll check out the trade-weighted one, but it's still not going to completely really do what it is I'm looking for. Let me finish this up. May 2011, that's when silver and gold were at their all-time high. Well, I don't know about all-time high. Yeah, all-time high gold was. I think the 1980 thing doesn't count because that's a due to some manipulation. The Hunt Brothers thing, a bunch of other people doing the... Okay, anyway, so... But around that time, you have these guys talking about hyperinflation, talking about how gold and silver is going to go up and up and up and up. But gold and silver, the dollar went up. And during this time, gold and silver and a bunch of other things went down. I remember saying that time, I was saying, come on, buy the silver. Do you really think the dollar is going to go up? But it does. They can mess with the money supply. Well, I believe there's a lot going on with the euro. And since that's a huge part of how this turns out, you know, how much of this is because of our Federal Reserve and how much of this is because of the European Central Bank? I'm going to have to look into this. Anyway, I got to finish this up. So by Christmas, since Christmas, here we are, March 2012. We're still up to 80. We have a lot to get to if we're ever to get back to this this point. You really think we're going to see this kind of economy again? I don't know. It would be pretty cool to have $4 an ounce silver. This is kind of scary. You know, I think about in terms of my life. Around here there was so much hope. And not really much happened, and things were getting kind of I remember this day when I found out that we were invading Iraq. When I saw that on TV, I was just like, oh shit, it's the beginning of the end. And lo and behold, you know, all this stuff happens.